Femi Femu. Oko Mama.
That's me.
She's here.
Morning.
With stories making around the world.
Thank you, Rufa. I appreciate that.
Good.
I love it.
Yeah.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Ms. Kila. How are you doing?
Good to be.
Let me tell you about what's happening around the world. Now, let's start in Canada, where all 80 people on board a flight where the plane flipped over and crashed on landing at Toronto Pearson International Airport have survived, thankfully. The 18 people, though, were injured, 3 of them critically, and it has been reported that the patients with critical injuries include a child, a man in his 60s, and a woman in her 40s. Now, the flight, operated by Delta subsidiary Endeavour Air, crashed while landing at around 2:30 p.m. local time in Canada. Police say that the circumstances surrounding the crash are currently unknown, but Canada's Transport Minister, Anna Anand, says that she is closely following this serious incident. Now, Toronto has been blighted by bad weather in recent days, and on the day of the incident, on Monday, the airport was experiencing snow and winds of up to 65 miles per hour, while the temperature was around minus 8.6 degrees Celsius. Now, prior to the crash, dozens of departures and arrivals at that airport have been delayed due to the weather. Now, moving on now to the United Kingdom. And Lydia Mugambe, who is a 49-year-old United Nations judge based in the UK, has been accused of deceiving a young woman into coming into the UK to work as her slave while the judge studied at the University of Oxford for a PhD in law. Now, prosecutors allege that Ms. Mugambe, who is also a High Court judge back in Uganda, took advantage of this alleged victim's immigration status, forcing her to act as her maid and look after her children without pay. Oxford Crown Court also heard that Ms. Mugambe is accused of conspiring with a man called John Leonard Mugewa, who is the Ugandan Deputy High Commissioner. And it's believed that the pair arranged for the young woman to come to the United Kingdom. The pair are alleged to have participated in some form of a trade-off in which Mr. Mugewa, the Deputy High Commissioner, allegedly arranged for the Ugandan High Commissioner to sponsor this woman's entrance into the United Kingdom in exchange for the UN judge to speak to a judge in charge of a legal action that he had been named in. I hope we're on the same page here. Now, Mugambe denies all 4 charges against her. And as I said, at this court in Oxford, this case is still ongoing. But it is another example, an alleged example, because this is still within the courts, of modern day slavery or accusations of it. And it is something that should be condemned in all its forms.
Well, slavery should be condemned in all its form, and I totally agree. But I think there's a cultural nuance that we need to miss. I'm going to do something unpopular here, and I'm going to ask people to situate things in context. When a British court uses the word slavery for an African that brings somebody to help, obviously, the judge, in this case, the PhD candidate or student, is violating some laws. I think they must have lied on the application form. Yes. That's the crucial thing. But the former mentees, the intent, I argue, and I argue to the world, that it is not to go and enslave somebody in England. The African culture has a system of extended family of having what you call maid, which is not intended to be slave. In most cases, this house help get a better life in the houses of those people that are having them as maid. The question, though, is, can she do what they do in Nigeria or maybe in Uganda, in the UK? I guess the answer is no. I think it's a question that elites, and unfortunately, in this case, the lady herself is a lawyer, is a judge, yes, should understand the law and should understand cultural differences and context. The joke in Cambridge is, we say, the benefit of classic studies, that you know the situations are changing and you act that way. But I think at some point, African leaders, and I use leaders in a literal word of elites in academia, in business and in politics, need to speak up about these cultural differences, and everybody needs to absorb it very well. It doesn't look good. It looks very messy because, and like you have done, Femi, as well, you introduced her as a UN judge, a PhD student.
Yes.
The next thing, we should just shoot her. But I don't think we should.
I mean, we shouldn't do that. There's plenty of things that can be done before that type of punishment, but she should know better. And even if we understand cultural nuances, this is not someone who is related to her. This is not a younger sister.
I agree.
You know that this is somebody from different circumstances that you are. And I agree that you may have or be exposed to the prospects of a better life, right? Yeah. But she wasn't paid, and she wasn't allowed to go to school. So under the Modern Day Slavery Act, even though we don't know if it applies here because we're still early on, the judge should have known better, does know better than what she did.
So there is a visa route to bringing your domestic staff to the UK. It's called the domestic staff visa. And I know a number of people who've used that route. So and there are certain qualifications. And that's why it's hard to believe that this woman, who is a judge herself, would not have either investigated, researched on what was available before bringing a staff in. So I don't want to think that she brought her without due process. Probably applied for that visa for her, you can. But there are certain conditions in order not to violate the Modern Slavery Act which is that you have to pay the person. They have a minimum wage in the UK. So it's not the informal system that we have back home in Nigeria. I'm not a judge, I'm not a lawyer, but I understand these things. So I cannot claim ignorance as a defense, especially when it has to do with immigration matters. Except the person came with a fellow visitor's visa and came to stay for a few, then person shouldn't even be working. So if you're going to do things right, I have friends who, when they even go on holiday, apply for a domestic staff visa for their domestic staff, and then it includes chauffeurs, housekeepers. So you can actually go and work as a housekeeper in the UK or a nanny, but it has to be done the right way, it has to be done the proper way. This reminds me of the story of the Nigerian lawmaker who also fell foul of the law. We cannot claim any longer as global citizens that we do not know this is how we do it back home. If you do it back home like that, when you're going to another country, especially a country with very strict laws, fighting against human trafficking, modern slavery, then you need to keep abreast of the law and not use that as an excuse. I'm actually glad that the UK is making efforts to discourage this kind of behavior. For too long, if we're to enact that law in Nigeria, a lot of people will be in jail. And maybe it's time for us to look at it and see people that we keep in our homes and just say, oh, at least I'm giving you a roof. But the quality of life is akin to slavery. A number of us know people like that, relatives like that, who treat their housekeepers or domestic staff like slaves. And so maybe we need to introduce that kind of law here and ensure that underage children are not hired as nannies or housekeepers, that when you hire somebody, pay the person. Don't say that I'm doing you a favor. When you have an agreement to send the person to school, if that's the agreement you had with the family of the person, abide by it. Usually employers are kings. So let's be honest, let's not allow culture to make us actually do the same thing that we criticize the West for, which they did hundreds of years ago, which is modern day slavery. With regards to the aircraft in Toronto, isn't it mind-boggling? Adefemi, I think a number of people might want to think twice when they're traveling in the US. And it's interesting because the air travel is said to be the safest form of travel because of how low the incidence of accidents like this happen. The only thing I would say here is, thankfully, all 80 on board are fine. Yes, some 18 of them, sustained injuries. But what they said was also the expertise of the crew on board helped to facilitate the movement, the safe passage of passengers without having a lot of injuries on them. But I do think that, like we always say, investigations, but the other 2 or 3 that have happened in recent times are under investigation, and we're still waiting for the reports on that, and we're still seeing more. We need to pay close attention to this. It's looking a lot more than meets the eye.
So a couple of things. I'll talk about the air accident first. There's this polar vortex weather pattern that has been going on in the West this weather season. I mean, I was in Europe and America in January. It was really bad. I barely scraped through to be able to get a flight out of Dallas in January back to London. It was a big problem, and it's been affected. So there are weather conditions also, but we'd like the Canadian authorities to be able to investigate and come out with a very coherent report. The plane did skid over, which was a very sad one. As regards cultural nuances, with due respect, we should stop lying to ourselves as Africans. We lie to ourselves so much. And that thing we do that we say we are helping people from our family and we bring them, can we treat those people like we treat our children? No, we don't do that. So we are malicious, we are terrible people, we look down on other people in society, and we don't have regard for them. And that's what we do with people that are beneath us that we call maids or assistants. I had to go and check. What's the average salary for a maid in the UK?
Yes.
The average maid salary is £27,000 or £14 per hour.
Let me pull up my calculator. Let's translate that to Naira.
Entry-level positions start at £23,000 per year. Experienced workers can make up to £50,000 per year. So all this lady did was to be able
Yes.
to go through that route so that they were able to pay between £23,000 to £50,000
Yes.
per year. A maid is a job.
It
There are
is.
professional nannies in the UK
Yes.
and other parts of the world. We know the ecosystem that takes them. But because we can subjugate others, make them feel less than us, attack them, and still want those people to take care of our children, then
Agreed.
we take the piece. So Nigerians are culprits. It's not that you are making their lives any better. Some do, but some don't. But really, it's a job you need to pay them for. And let me now even enunciate a case. You know, there was a case of a grandma that went to do a mugo in the UK. And I think the case got out of court. And they said they actually had to pay the grandma for the service.
Yeah.
Because doing a mugo was not free. You can't say because it's
It's 3 months?
No, if
Is
you're
it 3
related,
months?
if
you
you're
get.
related.
There was a grandmother, I think, I don't know where the
Because
case
they
is,
do a mugo for work as well.
that claimed.
They're professional.
But was it her own grandchild?
I think it was her grandchild or something that was even
Okay.
requesting
No,
a
no,
payment.
let us go. Your own
Let's go to
grandchild.
newspapers,
That was because
please.
the payment.
But some people
So-
bring in older women
Yes.
to
Do a mugo.
serve.
Very-
Right.
That's the business.
I'm not sure I got the case correctly. Maybe it was her grandchild or not her grandchild.
No,
A woman came to take care for a mugo, and it got to a point they had to claim.
Yeah, she came to work.
So Femi, that's where we're
20,
heading to. If we
yes.
follow their stance.
We'll have to see.
Take it
And
to
just
the
for the
context.
record, £23,000. If we're using perhaps an outdated exchange rate of about what, 2,000 naira, 2,200 naira to the pound is about 50 million naira. Just so we're aware how much people are earning
Then you
for
think
maid
doctors
work and domestic work in the
resigning to go and
UK.
be maid?
Yes. There we go. All righty, let's move on to newspapers now. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. And This Day leads with the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics reporting a decline in headline inflation from 34.8% in December to 24.48% in January. This is following the rebasing of the Consumer Price Index, which allows for a change in the basket of goods and services used to measure inflation in order to give a more accurate representation of what people are buying today and what it will cost. Now, every Tuesday, This Day releases its weekly legal insert, which features The Advocate by Onike Paul Braithwaite. Now, this week, her article is titled For the Attention of the IGP, and it's a scathing condemnation of that awful video, which was actually taken on What's Trending last week, of a pregnant woman involved in a scuffle with policemen in Akwa Ibom. Braithwaite writes that no sane person would apply such excessive force and manhandle a pregnant woman like the policeman did in that video. As always, a very interesting read, so please do pick up your edition of The Advocate inside This Day today. Now, it's not even both, the New Telegraph, The Punch, The Tribune and The Guardian lead this morning with the crisis in the Lagos Assembly worsening. As we've already heard on the introduction of the morning show, DSS did barricade the offices of some members, including the Speaker's own. Lawmakers then had to forcefully gain entry into the chamber and declared their support for the Speaker, Mojisola Miranda. Now, the Governance Advisory Council, the highest decision-making body of the APC in Lagos State, has, however, reaffirmed its plans to meet with President Bola Tinubu over the ongoing crisis in the State House of Assembly. Now, this crisis deepened following moves by the ousted Speaker, Mudashiru Obasa, who, in his attempts to return to the House. Meanwhile, the Vanguard reports on the crisis over the control of local government secretariats in Osun State yesterday. The situation did worsen as, unfortunately, 8 people, including a local government chairman, were reportedly killed and scores of other people were injured as elected local government officials on the platform of the APC resumed offices at various council secretariats. Now, the Daily Trust does lead with, it's called the Musharik Al-Dahabia Al-Mutawazi. It's a Saudi Arabian company contracted by the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria and the Muslim Pilgrims Welfare Boards of different states in Nigeria to provide services to Nigerian pilgrims during the 2025 Hajj exercise. And they're threatening to take Nigeria to an international arbitration court due to the Commission's alleged failure to adhere to terms of contract. Finally, let's go to the United Kingdom and look at the Daily Mail. It has Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch saying that it is time to get up off the knees and start fighting for Western values. She's calling for free speech and free markets, but also it should be noted that her words, the getting up off of knees, is in reference to the Prime Minister taking the knee in support of the Black Lives Matter movement back in 2020. Let us not forget that Kemi too herself is also black, and you would imagine that she believes or should believe that Black lives also matter. But those are your papers from around the world.
What are the Western values Kemi is calling for?
Free speech, free markets, moving away from wokeism, those things.
Colonialism?
She didn't say that.
Congo?
Well,
should I continue? Colonialism in West Africa? Because when you talk about Western values, those are also part of the Western values. Didn't they colonize? Were they not part of their values? Empire?
Are we not speaking English?
Is that
here
not
because
part of the
colonialism?
values? Are we not speaking because of colonialism? Is that not what she said we should do? That the British Empire did a lot of good for Africa. Didn't she say that?
She said so.
She said British Empire opened our eyes. So is that the Western values she's talking about? And wokeism. Oh, wokeism, because we are challenging theories. Because we are challenging people like Cecil Rhodes that came to steal our lands and steal our gold from Africa, and we are saying Rhodes must fall. You call that wokish? Because we are challenging the likes of Benny Batano and the other people that came to steal our mineral resource. Because we are calling for reparation. Didn't King Leopold steal us dry in Congo? Didn't King Leopold get revealed by the likes of Morel? So is it because we're calling for all of that, you call that wokish values? Mm-hmm. Because that's what they call woke. A lie?
Yeah.
I mean, Kemi should spell. She says all of this mumbo-jumbo bunkum most of the time. She should really spell for all of this rubbish she says, really.
All right.
The values that are apt are the values of integrity and fairness, which the West has never supported all these years.
Mm. Yeah, I was just going to give some stats this morning. Despite her aligning with the West and what we've called Uncle Tomism, she's said to be one of the least popular conservative leaders in recent times. The only person that she's higher than is Liz Truss. And even Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson. I mean, it's so sad because as a Nigerian,
yes,
it would have been nice to really see one of us, and even though she might not identify as that, you know, they're the first black woman to attain that role. And you know how I feel about women as well.
Absolutely.
I love seeing women in positions of power and, you know, just getting the seat at the table. But to see that the manner in which she hopes to retain this seat is to denigrate her home country with some mixed truths and also trying to play to the gallery is what the big issue is. And my challenge with this, politics aside, is what you're projecting to even the younger generation, that you do anything to get what you want. So you can step on heads, step on toes, say what you like, just as long. Oh, the men have been doing it for many years, so let me not really condemn her for that. But it's just sad to see that 48% of conservatives say she does not look like a prime minister in waiting. Her approval rating, the first that was conducted by YouGov, puts her at 24% popularity with the British people. She still falls behind Farage and, and Keir Starmer. So despite all these things that she's saying, it's still not helping her chances. So at the end of the day, I hope she won't look back with a lot of regrets that she's had to put out this rhetoric, had to be, labeled as an Uncle Tom, and not still achieve the aim that she was hoping for.
I love that you mentioned that poll looking at whether or not people feel as though she looks like the leader of a party.
Yeah.
That is British.
Yeah, very British.
In its core.
Very British.
Does she look like the politician she's supposed to be? She is.
All right, we're out of time. Did you want to say something, Professor?
No, that's fine.
All right,
Kevin.
Thank you very much, Adefe.